Hey guys, it's Jeremy here at Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What we have here today, guys, is the next installment of the top 10 albums of each year. So we're up to 1998, kind of working our way through. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What I've been doing, I started back in 1970, been working my way through every year, just giving my top 10 albums of each year. The 1970s, I did just the top 5, and then starting in the 80s, I went up to top 10. Definitely check out my playlist for all the other years. So there's a playlist for my top 5 from all the 1970 years, and then my top 10 for 1980s, and then also in the 1990s. Almost the full decade's done. We're up to 1998. So let's jump right in, guys. This is another challenging year for music. There were some good releases, but only a couple that were really standouts, and the other ones were just kind of getting decent or mediocre, but still solid enough to put on the list, in my opinion. So let's jump right in, guys, so it's not too long of a video. So at number 10, I have Nightfall in Middle Earth from Blind Guardian. I'm not a huge power metal guy, but Blind Guardian is a pretty good band. I always enjoyed this album. It's pretty solid. Standout tracks would be War of Wrath is good, Nightfall is good, and Into the Storm is good. Pretty solid album overall. At number 9, I have Mercenary by Bolt Thrower. It's their 6th studio album. Not their strongest album, but all the Bolt Thrower albums are good in my opinion. Always brutal, really heavy, crunchy riffs, never disappoint. So I had to add it to the list. At number 8, I have Soulfly's debut. Fucking love Max Cavalera, one of my all-time favorite metal heroes. I love all the projects he's been in. Probably my favorite are easily still the early Sepultural stuff. But all his Soulfly albums are pretty good. And his Cavalier Conspiracy albums are great as well. What's the other one? Killer Be Killed is good as too. The supergroup, like everything he does is really good. So I had to put the debut album on here from Soulfly. Really solid album. At number 7, I have Canadian death metal legends Gore Guts with Obscura. This is a great album, really crunchy stuff. They only had a few albums, but they're all pretty solid. Definitely a band you should check out if you're not familiar with them. Just some really classic Canadian death metal. And at number 6, I have the debut solo album from Jerry Cantrell. He's most noticeably known for his guitar work and backing vocals for Alice in Chains. Always loved Alice in Chains, so I followed his solo career as well. The debut solo album is my favorite of his personally. It sounds very similar to Alice in Chains. It has like a similar vibe to it, just with his vocals, obviously. Excuse me, guys. And just a solid album. I remember seeing him live a few times on this tour, with songs like My Song, Cut You In, Breaks My Back. Just some really solid tracks on this album. Really, like I said, Alice in Chains inspired, but very catchy tunes. And at number 6, or 5, I should say, I have the debut album from Amon Marth, One Cent from the Golden Hall. Really like Amon Marth, really solid band. They become pretty big over the years. I find their last couple albums have been kind of like the same. They kind of have been putting out the same album the last 3 or 4 albums, but it's still really solid. But their debut was killer. I found it more raw and definitely more on the death metal side of it instead of the more melodic part. But really killer album, really enjoyed it. At number 4, I have Merciful Fate with Dead Again. Definitely an album that doesn't get enough love in my opinion. Most people talk about Melissa and Don't Break the Oath, which are my favorite albums as well. But the later Merciful Fate stuff is really killer. I pretty much love all their albums. I definitely prefer Merciful Fate material over King's solo albums personally. But this is a really solid album. Definitely check it out. At number 3, I have the debut album from Children of Bodom. I think this was released in Europe in 97 technically, but it came out over here in 98, so I counted it in the list. I'm a big fan of Children of Bodom, always was growing up when I got into metal. I think Are They Dead Yet was the first album I picked up of theirs that got me into the band, and I quickly picked up all their albums. I still need to buy, I think the last one, Hexed it's called. I haven't got that one yet. But I love this band. I love all their stuff. Really good melodic death metal band. and just killer stuff. Number 1 and 2, I was kind of debating. I didn't know which one to put at 1 or 2. It was kind of a toss-up. But number 2, I decided to go with the third album by Opeth called My Arms Your Hearse. My favorite band of all time. Love all their stuff. The earlier stuff is obviously more death metal. But this is a really solid album, one of their greatest for the earlier period. I prefer their other stuff kind of in the middle, like Blackwater Park, Still Life, Deliverance, etc. But this is a really killer death metal album. And Michael's death growls are some of the best I've ever heard. And number 1, I had to put Death, their last album, The Sound of Perseverance. Love all the Death stuff. I think they're one of the bands that have the most consistent discographies. Every album is like a 9 or 10 out of 10. It's killer stuff. Chuck was a musical genius. And later in their career, they kind of changed their sound to be more progressive. And it would have been interesting to see how he would have kept going if he was to live. But I love all of Death's material. It's one of my favorite bands. Definitely my favorite death metal band of all time. And just killer stuff. So let me know down below, guys, what your top 10 for 1998 would be. There might be some albums I missed. It was kind of slim picking. I couldn't really come across too much that grabbed my attention. But I appreciate you guys watching. And stay tuned for 1999 coming hopefully in the next week or two. And keep it metal.